Picture this, you're 20 minutes into a 25-mile time trial, you're settled, you're locked in, power is steady, breathing is hard but controlled. You could talk, but you wouldn't want to. The effort has been going on for 20 minutes and it could go on for another 30, which is strange if you think about it. Because last time we said the body only stores 3 seconds of ATP, and the fastest system for rebuilding it runs out inside a minute. So what's powering this effort? The aerobic system, specifically the aerobic breakdown of carbohydrate, and what it produces from the same glucose molecule is staggering. Last time, the anaerobic glycolysis got us 3 ATP. The aerobic system gets 32, same starting material, completely different yield. A marathon runner derives 99% of their energy from this system. Even a 1500 meter runner, that's 4 minutes of effort, gets most of their energy aerobically. On the bike, it's the same. Your time trial, your sportive, your long road race, even in a trip where it feels like it's all sprints and surges, the aerobic system is doing the bulk of the work underneath. Today, I want to talk through how it works, because understanding the system is understanding what your threshold actually is. And understanding the bottlenecks is understanding what changes when you train. Last time we covered glycolysis, glucose broken down into pyruvate, and we said pyruvate becomes lactate on the anaerobic side. But pyruvate is a fork in the road. If oxygen supply can't keep up with the demand, pyruvate goes toward lactate. That's what we covered. If oxygen is available and the aerobic system has capacity, pyruvate goes the other direction through an enzyme called pyruvate dehydrogenase. It gets converted into something called acetyl-CoA. And acetyl-CoA is the molecule that enters the Krebs cycle, the gateway to the aerobic system. Pyruvate dehydrogenase is a gatekeeper, the first bottleneck on the aerobic side. Think about what that means on the bike. You're riding at threshold, the intensity where your aerobic system can just about keep up with the demand. At that molecular level, pyruvate dehydrogenase is working near its functional limit, funneling as much pyruvate as it can into the aerobic pathway. Whatever it can't handle spills over towards lactate, and pyruvate dehydrogenase improves with training. The gate gets wider. More pyruvate going aerobic, less reliance on anaerobic glycolysis at the same intensity. That's one of the reasons why your threshold goes up when you train. Before we go further, I need to give you one idea, because everything from here on runs on it. The aerobic system works by stripping hydrogen atoms off fuel molecules, loading them onto carrier molecules and delivering them to something called the electron transport chain, where the energy is finally extracted. So why hydrogens? Because hydrogen atoms carry an electron, and that electron carries energy. Every time a hydrogen ion gets stripped off a fuel molecule, energy is being moved, packaged, sent somewhere useful. The carrier molecule that does most of this is called NAD. Think of NAD as a delivery van. NAD plus is the empty van. It drives up to a reaction in the Krebs cycle, picks up a hydrogen, gains the electron, and becomes NADH, full van. NADH carries those electrons to the electron transport chain, drops them off, the energy gets extracted, NAD goes back to being NAD plus, empty van, back for more. There's also a second carrier called FAD. It's the same idea, different molecule, and its loaded form is FADH2. It enters the electron transport chain at a different point, produces slightly less ATP than NADH, but both are essential and both get loaded during the Krebs cycle. Both deliver to the electron transport chain. If you remember one thing from this section, it's that hydrogens are where the energy is. Everything else is just logistics. Back to the time trial for a second. Now you're 30 minutes in, still on pace, and right now, inside the mitochondria of your working quads, NAD vans are loading up with hydrogen, driving to the electron transport chain, dumping their cargo and going back for more, thousands of times a second. That conveyor belt is the reason you can hold this power, and the thing that loads those vans is the Krebs cycle. Acetyl-CoA has come through the gate. Pyruvate dehydrogenase has done its job. Now we're inside the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, the Krebs cycle, also called the citric acid cycle or the TCA cycle. And it's a cycle because the end product loops back around to accept the next acetyl-CoA. It keeps turning as long as fuel is coming in. And it has its own bottleneck enzymes. There's two worth knowing about. Citrate synthase, that catalyzes the very first reaction in the cycle, and this one is special. There's a near linear relationship between citrate synthase activity and oxidative capacity in skeletal muscle in humans. If you increase citrate synthase, your oxidative capacity goes up proportionally. It's one of the strongest markers of mitochondrial fitness we have. If you want to know whether your aerobic training is working at the cellular level, citrate synthase is one of the answers. There's also isocitrate dehydrogenase, catalyzes the third reaction. It's another bottleneck. It's another enzyme that improves with endurance training. So we have trainable bottlenecks stacking up. Pyruvate dehydrogenase at the gate, citrate synthase and isocitrate dehydrogenase in the Krebs cycle, and we haven't even got to the electron transport chain yet. When your coach talks about building your aerobic engine, this is what's actually happening, increasing specific enzymes measurable at specific points in the pathway. The Krebs cycle isn't just the power station, it's loading the cargo for the electron transport chain, and that's where the real energy extraction happens. And there's a doubling effect. Glycolysis splits one glucose into two pyruvate molecules. Each pyruvate becomes one acetyl-CoA. So one glucose gives you two turns of the Krebs cycle. So per glucose molecule, 2 ATP from the Krebs cycle, 6 NADH, 2 FADH2, plus what glycolysis already produced, plus the NADH generated when pyruvate became acetyl-CoA. By the time everything reaches the electron transport chain, there are a lot of loaded cargo waiting. This is where the real money is made. You're still in that time trial. Maybe now you're 40 minutes in. Breathing hard, your heart rate is up. And inside the mitochondria of your working muscle, all those NADH and FADH2 molecules are arriving at the electron transport chain. It's a series of protein complexes embedded in the inner mitochondrial membrane. Think of it as a production line. NADH and FADH2 hand over their electrons. Those electrons get passed from one complex to the next. At each handover, a small amount of energy is released. That energy pumps hydrogen and protons across the membrane, building up a concentration gradient. More protons on one side than the other. Those protons want to flow back and they want to equalize, and the only route is through an enzyme called ATP synthase. As the protons flow through like water through a turbine, the energy of that flow phosphorylates ADP into ATP. That's the main event. But the chain needs a final electron acceptor, something to catch the electrons at the end of the line, and that's oxygen. Oxygen accepts the electrons and combines with hydrogen protons to form water. That's why when you breathe harder and when you ride harder, more aerobic metabolism, more oxygen demand, and that's why VO2 max matters. It reflects the ceiling on how much oxygen you can deliver and use at the mitochondria. The key enzyme at the end of that chain is called cytochrome C oxidase, final reaction in the oxidative pathway. Its activity increases with ADP concentration, provided oxygen is available. And here's the important bit, cytochrome C oxidase increases with training. So, trainable bottlenecks at every stage. Pyruvate dehydrogenase at the gate, citrate synthase and isocitrate dehydrogenase in the Krebs cycle, cytochrome C oxidase in the electron transport chain, and oxygen delivery sitting above all of it. The bottleneck is the thing that matters, and the bottleneck is trainable. It's the same idea from last time, it's the same principle, just applied to a different system. Now, the total ATP yield from the complete aerobic breakdown of one glucose molecule through glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain, 32 ATP. Anaerobic glycolysis, 3. 32 versus 3, same starting material. That's why the aerobic system powers your time trial, your long road race, your day in the saddle. Yes, it is slower, but the yield per glucose is enormous. And this is what threshold actually is. I said we'd get here, and here we are. Threshold is the intensity at which the rate of aerobic ATP production can just about match demand, and the rate of lactate appearing in the blood is balanced by the rate at which it's being cleared. Below threshold, the aerobic system handles it comfortably. Pyruvate goes through the gate, The Krebs cycle turns, the electron transport chain does its work. Lactate is produced because it's always being produced to some degree, but it's being cleared as fast as it appears. Now, when you go above threshold, aerobic flux can't keep up. More pyruvate spills towards lactate, hydrogen ions accumulate, the metabolic disturbance accelerates, and it's just not sustainable. So you push your threshold up, and the intensity at which that balance shifts moves higher. You can ride harder whilst maintaining metabolic stability. And that's not just a number on a power meter or on your head unit. That's more pyruvate dehydrogenase, more citrate synthase, more cytochrome C oxidase, molecular changes expressed as pure watts. Next time we follow a different fuel into the same system, fat, because fat enters the Krebs cycle through a completely different front door. And that door has its own speed limit, its own bottleneck, and its own reason for being the fuel that powers your long, easy rides, but can't keep up when the pace goes up. That's the crossover concept, and it's where the fat burning zone comes from. And why it is real, but it's also misunderstood. Saddleupcycling.co.uk if you want to get in touch with me. Saddle up, and remember, it's not your legs that crack at threshold, it's a single enzyme. So really, it's not even your fault. All right, see ya. Cheers.